welcome back to our Teddy and Tangerine tutorial. And today we're going to do the whole of the body. Yesterday I said we were just going to do the upper body, but we might as well do his arms, legs and tummy. And we need to build up the dark first so that we get that really nice shadow all around the tangerine. And the other thing we're going to add to today's tutorial is some body colour. Now body colour is where you use like a really thick opaque colour to create some shapes and textures. And if you have in your painting set some white paint in a tube, then just put a little blob out on your palette. Don't use it yet. And then if you don't have that and you've just got a little white square on your watercolour palette, then get some wet tissue and fold it into a little square like that and put the really wet tissue on top of your white paint. So once you've done the body, your white paint will be nice and wet and ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to build up the body colour and we're going to mix up some brown. And if you remember, we used the blue, the red. If you put equal quantities together, you'll end up with a sort of purple colour. And then you add your yellow. And you should end up with a brown. Doesn't matter which way round you go, you can mix the yellow with the red and add the blue, or you can mix the red with the blue and add the yellow, whichever way round you want to do. You want a really nice dark brown. So for a dark brown you use a lot of red and blue and just a little bit of yellow. And once you're happy with that, we're going to put some water onto our paper. So we're going to put some water over his tummy like that. And if you've made a little whoopsie-daisy, gone over the edge of your tangerine, you can just put the water over the mistake as well. So put a little bit of water on his tummy, pick up your brown paint and drop it in like this. And you should find that it looks nice and fluffy when you put it on. The paint should sort of spread on its own. And we just want that nice little fluffy watercolour spread to happen just down there where it's nice and dark. If it doesn't spread, don't worry. What you can do is clean your brush, take all the water out of it, and then what you can do is you can just wiggle the edge like that. So just encourage the paint to move, just wiggle it next to it. Like so. Now we leave his tummy to dry, and then what we're going to do is put the dark either side of the tangerine on the inside of his legs. So what we need to do is we need to put water over the whole of his legs, but make sure that when you come close to your tangerine that you bring the water just up to the edge of your tangerine. Just do one leg at a time. Put the water over the leg and up to the tangerine edge. If you go over the tangerine, your brown will go over your fruit and that won't look so good. Then what you need to do is pick up your lovely brown paint, give it a little stir first, pick it up, and then we're going to drop it in and we should get that lovely fluffy texture again. And we'll put some music to this so that you've done that, you want to let that dry. So it's going to dry fairly quickly. This side I did second, this side I did first. So what we can do on the side that we did first, we can put a little bit of water onto his arm. So let's put a little bit of water onto this side first. And I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to my brown. You should mix your colour first. So if you run out of colour, mix your colour first. But it doesn't matter, we can always put some more water onto his arm. And I'm mixing it up a little bit brighter, a brighter brown, by adding more red and more yellow, particularly more yellow. Like so. And then we'll replace the water. Pick up the paint, and we're going to tap it on the dark side of his arms. So the upper side we will do with our colour pencils, so that we get a nice contrast of textures. So drop this colour in and let it just move over towards the light. Tap, 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 like that. And because it's a little bit lighter, we won't lose the edge of the arm. And if you want to, you can just overlap that colour into the leg and just tap down into the leg again. It'll probably still be a little bit wet, in which case you'll just end up with a nice texture. But you can see that the leg's a little bit darker than the arm, and that way we don't lose the shapes. So let's go on to the other side. Pick up your colour, really pick it up like that. And then tap it in. This time we want to have it a little bit darker near the tangerine and a little bit darker on his shoulder, coming about halfway down his arm, and where his paw is we can sort of leave a little bit of light. And when you get to the edge, you can just tease out like this with your brush. If it's got a nice point to it, you can just tease it out. And if you haven't got a point, what you can use, if you've got like a sort of a pair of scissors or something, is you can tease it out like this while it's still wet. So a little tiny pair of scissors will just do that job for you. Or if you've got a pointed end to your brush, you can use the pointed end of your brush to pull out some of those little hairs. So what we're going to do now is have a look at his tummy and add in some texture to his tummy. So we can use the darkest brown that you've got and a black pencil, a dark brown pencil and a black pencil. And we're going to do that same scribbly thing that we did for his head. So keep your point upwards like that, so it's on its tiptoe, and that way you won't get a snapped point, and just wiggle in there, get it nice and curly. Nice little squiggles. Now don't forget not to go over your tangerine. Your tangerine has to be squiggle free. Everyone's tangerine has to be squiggle free. So just don't go over your tangerine edge. And then with the brown, I'm going to come up and put some brown on just above the black. So we get a nice combination of black and brown there. And then as we get nearer his neck, I'm going to go to my light brown. Now, if you don't have a light brown, don't worry, just carry on with the dark brown. And put a little bit of a light brown area there, squiggle, squiggle. And then with the dark brown, we're going to go up and underneath his scarf. Now remember, he doesn't have that much fur going over his scarf, so try not to go over your scarf edge. Little wiggles. Like so. Now if you want to, you can use your pencil. So if you've got a 2B or an HB pencil, you can add more texture to the teddy by getting a really nice sharp point and just sort of giving some nice little curls and twists through the lighter area. Pencil's very good for adding that texture at the end if you wanted to. And it's quite good for getting into, if you've got a nice sharpener and you can get it nice and sharp, you can get into the darker areas. You can also use your black colour pencil. He's very good for making these little shadows underneath here, nice and dark. And just make sure when you do a dark line that you just take some nice little curly bits coming out from it, so you get the idea of that just being shadow and not a hard outline. And we go really, really dark into this corner because that's where it gets really, really dark, and that's what will give your teddy bear a bit of form. So the other thing you can do is you can use your orange pencil and you can shade over that, because there'll be a little bit of orange reflecting up onto his fur just to make it nice and warm in there. And you can just use that like a little shading over the top. And you can also use some of your pink as well. You can put some little pink curls in there as well. That will make his tummy area look really nice and warm and cozy. Like so. So that's the darkest area really in there and in around the inside of his legs. So we're going to use the same process on the inside of his legs, and as we come out, use a lighter pencil. And if you haven't got a light brown, you could use a yellow, because the yellow will look quite nice over the top of the brown watercolour. So just have a go. That one's a little bit hard. If you find that your pencil is not giving you very much colour, try a different pencil. It might just be the type of pencil that doesn't suit the paper. That one gives off a little bit more colour, so that one might be better. Okay, off we go. So we're going to put our little squiggles on the inside of the leg, nice and dark, and then our little squiggles get lighter as we come out to the bottom of his paw. And have a look at the shape of the fur on his paw. There's a lot of little downward movements and mark making that we need to do to get that fur to look like it's heading downhill. Off we go. So now what we need to do is come back to our paints, and what I want to do is I want to use my brush in that sort of squirrely pattern, but I want to add some really nice darks. So I'm going to mix up a really dark colour with my dark blue and my dark red. They go as dark as you can. Add a little bit of yellow just to make it so that it's not purple. And then run your brush so it's on a really nice point. If you don't have a pointed brush, just try and use like the corner of the brush or something like that. Or you can just use some more pencil. And then you just want to sort of add in some nice little darker bits of texture into those nice little dark corners. So I'm just going to go a little bit darker in here. Going to build it up in layers, so just put a little bit on and then move to another area. I want it really dark in here, and I just want to get it so that it's nice and dark underneath his arm and on the inside of his leg. Use those nice little tiny little dashes like that. Then we'll leave it to dry, and we'll do the next little thing if you want to have a go. What we're going to do is we're going to use some opaque colour just to take some of those little furry bits around his eyes and around his mouth, just to get that sort of woolly feel to him. One of the things that we need to do as well is we need to just make sure that our tangerine has got a really nice edge to it, because if our tangerine looks woolly, then we won't get that nice contrast between Teddy and the tangerine. What you can do is very gently work your darkness around there. Clean your brush, and on the edge of your tangerine, just wipe very carefully with a damp brush, just to get rid of anything that's come over the edge of your tangerine. And that should just smooth it away. Don't press too hard. You're just wiping away some little bits of paint or pencil that have gone over onto your tangerine. So our dark paint's going to dry really quickly, but what I want to do is just show you how to use white paint if you wanted to use it. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up some of the white paint and mix it in with our dark colour. And then add quite a lot of yellow, so really mix your white and yellow into your brown. And that should give you a nice soft teddy bear colour. You want to make it paler than what you want, so add a bit more white. And then when you've got that, you want to use it like a little pencil, so keep it on its tiptoe, and we want to just take a few little hairs or little woolly teddy bear hairs around his eyes. And don't worry, if you haven't got this, you don't necessarily have to add these little woolly bits. It's just if you do happen to have some white paint, it's quite nice to add those at the end. So what we're going to do is to put some little woolly straggles over his nose and round his mouth. He'd give you a very woolly kiss, wouldn't he? With his little woolly mouth. As I say, this will dry fairly pale. It won't be getting in the way of anything. And if you feel like it's not bright enough, then you can just add the yellow and the white together, and that will give you a much brighter light. And that way you can make some really nice little bright hairs that go over his eyes, and maybe a few little white ones over his nose, just to make his nose stick out a little bit more. It won't be really bright, but it might be just enough to give him a special little bit of fluffiness. The more white you use, the more they'll stand out, but don't use pure white. Always add a little bit of colour to it, and that way they'll look nice and blended in with the fur. So that's if you've got some white paint. If you haven't, I'm sure he'll look just as furry without it, so don't panic if you haven't got that. And you can use that little bit of white paint anywhere else if you wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to something. Just add a little bit on the top of the tangerine. But also I'm just going to put some little tiny little hairs on the top of his paws, like so. Little fluffy tops to his paws. And if you wanted to get a little bit more of the loop pattern, you can do that just as it goes round over the dark. Get that slightly knitted, loopy, almost toweling, isn't it? But it will work best when you put it against the dark. So if you've got a dark area and you just want to make a little bit more of the fluffy curl, put it over the darker areas. Just a couple on the top of his tummy. And you see they fade away quite quickly, so they're not too loud anyway, so you won't need to worry about putting too much white on if you've got a little bit of yellow or brown into your white. Give him a nice little bit of an eyebrow there. Get a few of these nice little curly ones over his nose. So our paint that's really dark around the middle has dried now. So what I'm going to do is use my dark brown on its point and just add a few more little scribbles and squirrels over the top to blend the dark paint into the fur and make it look less layered on top. Because the paint will be slightly matter than your coloured pencil, so it's quite nice just to put a few little bits of coloured pencil over the top, just to soften it in, and then you'll get that lovely dark in the darker areas. And of course, don't forget that you can do some shading over the top. So if you felt like the paper wasn't struggling and you wanted to put a bit more colour overall, you can use your colour pencil like that over the top just to give it a little bit of colour. So if something looks the wrong colour, just get a nice colour to go over the top. As long as it's a teddy bear colour, you won't go far wrong. So I'm blending the watercolour over the top with some pencil over the top so that the whole thing becomes nice and knitted together. Obviously we're not copying exactly what the teddy bear looks like. It's not a photograph, it's just a really nice illustration. But I'm going to come back to my pen, and I'm going to make his eyes just a little bit darker and make that highlight just a little bit smaller so it looks brighter. I'm going to go over his nose again as well, just to make that black nose really shine out. Just putting some little dots around his mouth as well, just to show that the dark breaks in around his little smile. You know, when I'm painting things with a smile, I find myself smiling. It's quite addictive, you know. Try it, see what you think, even when you're doodling, if you can just do a little smile like that. I'm going to put some little dots of my pen just in here where his ears meet his head. Just little final dots here and there. A few little dots of darkness just in there as well. And I'm going to use my pen to get that really nice little bit of darkness in his scarf as well. Taking a while for that smile to wear off. And in there, and you can see just by putting those little bits of extra darkness in, it's quite nice. His little scarf stands out against the fur. Just gives it a nice little bit of extra tone in there. And you can, like I say, you can use just any old black pen if you want to. It will work. You could even use a coloured pen, you know, because it's not, we don't have to have dark shadows, we could have blue shadows. So I'm using my dark pencil, my black pencil, to just very gently go alongside that black pen, just to soften the shadow next to it. That just helps make it look a little less stark. So I put a little bit of that colour in with the pen and then just extend it out with my dark colour pencil. So our last little fiddly bits are to just maybe put a little bit of darkness under his chin there, and another little bit of darkness just coming underneath his scarf over here. And you could, like I say, use any old pen, but this one's quite good. These little drawing pens or little rotary pens are good, but you don't have to have that. You can use a biro or an ink pen. And just nice to get into those little corners there. Get them nice and sharp. And then I'm going to use my black pencil just to shade his scarf, just a little bit more on this side where it goes around and out of the light. We're getting a nice little shadow here, so I'm just going to put that over the top of the watercolour just to give it an extra shadow, and maybe another one over here. It just gives an extra bit of texture as well to him. So you can keep building this up and working into it as long as the paper will survive, and just enjoy the process. I think it's a really nice little process to go through, isn't it? And there's quite a lot you can do with your pencils. So if you don't have all of those coloured pencils, but you have got a little bit of paint, you can do your texture with your pencil. Here's a pencil just going over the top like that. Look, little swirls and shapes, and you can put your colour washes over the top of that. I quite like having the pencil as well. It's quite nice over the top. You can get your pencils nice and sharp, and it will give you this lovely sort of crisp little texture, and almost like a signature, because everyone's scribbles are different, aren't they? So your scribbles will be different to mine. A little bit more under his chin. And you can go around as well at the end and just put some nice little hairs that are coming out, make him really hairy on the outside. Use a bit of pencil, use a bit of colour pencil, whichever you feel makes the best furry edge. And I'm going to put a little bit of graphite just over the top of my tangerine, and a little bit of something in the middle of the stem just to make it not look too undone. And I'm also going to come back and put a little bit more orange, just shading over the top of my tangerine. And the paper's taking quite a lot, so I'm really enjoying just building up those layers. Really good fun. You can hear the pressure I'm putting onto it there. That's really nice. So if there's any areas that you think need lightening, I did show you this with a little bit of tissue paper. So if you wanted to lighten your dots at all on your highlights, you can do that by just wetting the area with some clean water and just dabbing some of that colour away. And that way you can emphasise some lights or soften some lights, whichever you want to do. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you like doing the Teddy and Tangerine, and I'd like to wish you a very happy holidays and hopefully see you next year. Maybe have a go at some of my botanical tutorials. If you like working with watercolour, this is just a very basic introduction of using mixed media, just to have a bit of fun and get to know your tools. Hopefully you'll be able to use whatever you can lay your hands on and have a go at painting the Teddy and Tangerine and see how you get on. Have a lovely holiday.